Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to go over painting some new panels and the wet on wet primer that I use. I'm getting a lot of questions about wet on wet primers, what they're used for, how many coats you should apply, these types of things. So I'll explain all that in the video. Hope you enjoy it.
Here we go then. As you can see, I've speeded this up, the cleaning process. It's the same every time. But in this video, I'm going to focus a little bit more on the wet on wet side of things because I've been getting a lot of comments just talking about wet on wet, asking different questions, mixing ratios, and that kind of thing. So I'm just going to go over what I'm doing. And if you're not sure, follow the technical data sheets. That's what they're there for. That's why they're made. If you're not sure, there's always something to refer to. So if you're using an own brand one at home, look it up online. There'll be one somewhere. Type in your brand name and what you're using, and then you'll be able to find something on there. And for me, I'm using the Standox brand because that's the paint scheme that we have installed. The primer that I use is the U5780, the wet on wet. That's mixed at a ratio of 5:1 and 30% thinners. So they recommend that the wet on wet is sprayed through a 1.3 to 1.4. I'm using my Walcom Slim X Light, which is a 1.3. It's perfect for this job, using for wet on wet. And the wet on wet primer it's the best substrate for your base coat. So my Standox wet on wet is perfect for my Standox base coat. So basically a wet on wet primer is the perfect substrate for new panels, and it's the best adhesion. Like I said, for your base coat, it's going to be the one that you want to use. So we apply 1 to 2 coats. I prefer to just do it all in one. You can do it in like one light coat followed by a wet coat, but I tend to put it all in one. That's how I've always done wet on wet, so it's kind of what I'm used to. And you shouldn't really worry about small bust throughs with this particular one because the Standox wet on wet primer has a good anti-corrosion properties to it, but it can also be mixed as a plastic primer. If you have a raw plastic bumper, you can switch out the thinners and then put a plastic additive in there as well. But you can see these small bust throughs on the bonnet. We're not worried at all because it has the good anti-corrosive properties. If they were considerably bigger, or you've had to take quite a large portion of the electrostatic coating off this new panel, then I would apply an etch underneath just to be safe. Although it does have good anti-corrosion properties, they don't recommend it. If it was a full wing, you strip the whole wing back, they don't recommend you do that. So just like I say, refer to your technical data sheets. I've read them. I know that this is good enough for the small bust throughs that I've got, otherwise I would have etched them anyway. And I just, like I say, I'm doing the one coat over the whole thing, and this is going to be perfect for my base coat to sit on top of once it's flashed off. You'll see this bumper in a second. The Seat have primered it, but it wasn't that good, and plus this is going blue, so the white primer underneath with it's recommended this shade. So on the computer you'll see that they give recommended shades of your wet on wet coat if you're using a computer. If not, you're just going to have to figure out, do a spray out card or something first just to double check. But for me, I know that this requires a dark one. They've given me a white primer, which is fine, in some cases, but for me it was no good, and it was quite rough, so I've just sanded the whole thing just to make sure that it's as smooth as possible for when I apply my paints and primers. And you just see, you just got to get in everywhere with this as well. This, you want the perfect substrate for your paint to go over. You want to make sure you've got all the edges, and there's certain colours that if you don't hit everywhere, silvers and stuff, you'll notice. Through the finish, the final product, you'll see there's areas that are not quite right. So it's important to get in every little nook and cranny. with this in and out. You'll see I'm just trying to get it right on the inside there. And you'll notice at the front I've got a BMW bumper eventually when we get around there. But I just want to mention that that's came from BMW primered. So I'm not going to apply a coat of wet on top of this because it's already come with a good factory primer. Unlike this one, that this was factory primered, but it just wasn't that nice, so we weren't able to roll with it. And plus, the colour recommended a dark undercoat, so we won't be doing the BMW one. You see, I have a bit of a switch round in here as well in a sec. Give this a good clean, just to make sure I've caught all the overspray from the wet on wet from the bonnet and bumper. But you can see this primer on here is immaculate. It's very nice. BMW do a good job there. And you'll see I've got my Walcom Geo, which is a 1.2, and the colour here is 668, which is a solid black with no metallics, no pearls or anything like that, just solid black. So it's quite a nice job to do. And you'll see here again, always edges first. As I'll talk you through my process, I have to make sure I've got my edges. If you were to come along certain edges, it looks like they're covered, and they're usually not. So if you start with your edges, your overspray goes onto the panel and you can see that it's covered. So that's why I do it that way. You're always thinking that you've caught them, and I've been caught out a number of times and had to blow in bumper edges because I haven't done it. So that's why I go this way now, making sure I've got my edges first. And again, just in and out of every single little nook and cranny, making sure that this is fully covered. Do love this Geo gun, the Walcom Geo. Got quite a big fan, and it's quite thin, so it's a bit slower on the application, but the fan's huge, so you get good coverage with it. Nice and comfortable in the hand, nice and light. And you'll see I've just done a coat on the inside there, which I like to go on the inside of the bumper because that helps to ensure that I've covered, that full edge, because it's visible when it's upright on the car. You don't want any edges, when the sun hits it, you can see, oh, it's not quite covered there. Especially with the bumper being a grey primer, even though it's a fairly dark grey. If it was a black primer, you might get away with it, but in the sunlight you're going to see that kind of grey. Not very nice. So just ensure you hit all your edges as well. Right, if that's no second coat, I was going to say I end up switching this around because of where the extraction is. I end up putting this BMW bumper to the back of the oven to ensure I don't get any overspray from the blue Seat parts onto the black, because that needs to remain solid black with with nothing. I probably wouldn't be as conscious about it if it was like a 475 black from BMW, which has metallic blues and a little bit of yellow through it. To catch a small amount of overspray on the bottom, it wouldn't be a bad thing, you wouldn't really notice it so much, but because this is solid black, I end up putting this bumper to the back of the booth and bringing the Seat bumper forward, and then that way, because the extraction's up this end, there shouldn't really be any overspray down the bottom. You see, missed an edge. As much as I preach about it, again on these inside edges, just making sure it's covered. It's like a paranoia I have. I've had it happen to me a few times, so while the paint's in the gun, have a look around. That's why I get the torch out. I wasn't sure if I'd done it there because I don't always put it in. This is a long enough video as it is to watch me walk around it with a torch as well. So more than likely I've seen it. So while I've still got the colour in the gun, I'm just going to give it a second coat, you know, just to ensure that this is right, because to be honest, I hate reworks. I take a lot of pride in my work, and for me to send something out which is such an easy thing to miss, but also such an easy thing to put right in the booth, you know, it is easy to miss an edge, or, you know, have it, you know, slightly see-through in certain areas, for how easy it is to fix it as well. Like I say, it's easy to miss it as well, but I'd rather it not go out like that and have to, you know, have to come back through, re-prep it. We've also, because we've got the track system, there's actually a queue of cars outside the oven that are ready to be painted, so any little mistakes just holds us up. So just, you know, I've been a bit diligent there and caught myself out doing my own voiceover, essentially. That was me thinking I was about to wrap it up, and I wasn't. It's like the old commentator's curse. I'm telling you, I'm switching bumpers round, and I'm not. But, you know, this bumper went out first try. You can see there I'm probably just looking around as well, double checking the inner edges. Make sure you're happy. But, you know, it's good to have the knowledge that this car's gone out first try. It might have cost me an extra couple of minutes here in the booth, putting that little, you know, if it was right the first time it'd be fine, but those 2 or 3 minutes to apply this second coat, it hasn't hurt us in any way. So now you see, ooh, different gun, the GTI Pro Light. This is a T110 air cap 1.2, and you'll notice now that I've switched the bumpers around. The Seat bumper is at the front where the BMW one was, and the BMW one is now at the back. I don't often break out this GTI Pro Light, but I believe on this day we ran out of PPS pots in the standard version, because it took quite a while to get my walcom adapters from 3M, and we only had PPS 2.0 pots and liners. So luckily they sent out some PPS 2.0 adapters for the Vilbis, so I was able to, you know, utilise what I had. Not that I've got anything against the GTI Pro Light, it's there as a backup gun, it's there. I like to just spray the wet bed through it, have it as a dedicated wet bed gun, but when you're in a pinch, you know, we still need to produce cars at the end of the day, and if I've only got the adapter that fits this gun, then that's all I can use. But also this, I think that's an 850 pot on there as well, 850ml pot, which was nice. I'm not having to run out and refill it so many times. And this Seat colour's lovely as well. It's a real nice deep blue. I'm just winding the fan in, trying to hit the sort of inner edge. I'm not really getting very good coverage with a wide fan, so I'm just trying to angle the gun as best as possible. Again, edges, edges, edges. I wonder if I'll catch myself out during this one. But, you know, if this is my car, it has to be right. You know, so I wouldn't send it out on anybody else's car where I'm not happy with it. Just get yourself in there and make sure you've got every inch of that bumper covered in the base coat. That way when it goes out and it's fitted up, it's only done once. It's worse when you notice it after the trimmers have put the bumper back together. They've put all the grills back in, all the fog lamps, any parking sensors, all that kind of malarkey. They put it all back together, they put it on the car, and you've missed a bit, or it's off colour, or something, you know, where the bumper has to come off. Now the trimmer's, you know, upset with you. He wants to know if we can do it on the car, and You know, 9 times out of 10 you can, but there'll be that one time where you go, no mate, sorry, can you take all the grills and all the fog lights and all the sensors back out of it please, because I was going a little bit too quickly that day. But what I like to think as well, when you're in the booth, that, you know, that's kind of my happy place. I'm in there, I take my time. You sort of shut off from the outside world. These 4 walls are like just a chance to slow down a little bit from the grind outside of prepping and polishing and all that stuff. You can come in here. No one's really gonna walk in and try and stop you and ask you questions as well, so you can just concentrate on what you're doing. You know, look at how long I've spent on this front bumper making sure that it's right. And again, this one went out first try, no issues, very clean. It's just having that little bit of due diligence, making sure that you're happy before you move on to the next bit. Now the inside of bonnets, I usually just give these one good wet coat. I try not to worry too much, as long as it's not really stripy, but you know, with your effect coats, you don't want to be trying to drop coat inside, you know, under a bonnet. You just get one nice coat on there to give it the colour, and that'll usually be better than how they come from the factory anyway. And you can see it's a little awkward with this bumper stand, all these bars and stuff in your way. But do the best you can. You know, you saw me do it on the front bumper. If you need to change your fan, change your air pressure or anything like that, just, you know, do it. That's what the adjustments are there for, to make your life easier. So if you need to, you know, you can't reach past that post or something's obstructing you, put it onto the jet, you know, wind the fan right in and have it, you know, a long small fan, and blow it inside the bonnet. But you'll see under there, that's more than enough, base coat under there. I'm just coming around, making sure I've got all my edges. And you'll see as well with the wet on wet, while this is a wet on wet video, you know, obviously I'm going to walk you through the process of base coat, but look at how silky smooth that has dried. It is the perfect substrate for this paint. Sometimes it looks a little peely when it goes on, but once it's flashed, it's silky smooth. And then as I apply my base coat, you can see as well that it lies down perfect, exactly how I need it to be. And then when it comes down to putting the clear coat on, that only makes your life with the clear coat much easier. The sort of the better that you can get the prep and the underlying coats, the better that your clear coat's going to come out. If I had to put this on quite heavy, or even like a heavy orange peel, you know, if it's not perfectly flat, you're going to see that in your end result. Some colours you might get away with it, darker colours, but on a sort of a high metallic or a silver, you know, if you can see lots of orange peel under your coats, you're not really going to bury that with clear coat. And you can just see I'm coming in with my second coat there. They do recommend with the Standox you get like a slight texture. If you look at this, as I'm talking about orange peel, it does have a texture, but it dries silky smooth. You know, you'll see the end result when I have a little walk around. I was super happy with the results, but what I'm doing is I'm following their technical data sheets. They've told me it needs to be sprayed this way, I'm going to spray it that way. You know, unless it's different. I mean, I have added an extra 5% thinners to my lacquer, which I prefer. That gives me a little bit more flow than what they were recommending. But that's just, I've done it their way. I've tried it and tried it and tried it. Tried adjusting my guns, tried changing, you know, I was using the 1.2 Geo, now I'm using the 1.2 HTE clear. And look at the base coat now, silky smooth. So I've tried a few different things, and then I've changed the sort of mixing ratio. Switched out gun setups, then I was like, nah, let me try an extra 5%. I've used it before with 10%, so I know it's not going to have any extra like popping, or it's going to run too bad. And because I've only put an extra 5% in, it's not really a massive difference, but it just helps give that finish that I'm looking for. You know, I joke all the time that I am a tart. I want it nice. I want to be the Instagram, look at me. Although I'm not really an Instagram look at me kind of guy, but I want that finish. It has to be good. I don't like polishing. I don't want to spend the time there. I say it in every video. The better you can get this base coat to lie down and the cleaner, the better for me. So you see, I've just got this first coat on. Real nice. Nothing crazy, nothing too thick, nothing heavy, but you can see because I've got that extra little bit of thinner for me, it goes on flat. And I'm going to do the same again with the bonnet. One good coat on the inside. I don't have to go crazy and put, you know, 2-3 coats under here. What we got there? A bit of fuzz. But yeah, you don't have to go mad under here. They don't at the factory. I'll give it a good coat of wet on wet, one good coat of base coat, and now one good coat of clear. I'm not going to be sanding or polishing under here, so that one coat is more than enough to provide adequate protection to the underside of this bonnet. And then, I'm not sure, I think I'll cut the camera off here because I like to lie these bonnets flat so that I can get more paint on the top side. Again, that's more to do with me being a tart and making sure that I've got the best possible finish on this bonnet, because I don't want to stand there for an hour trying to polish it back up. You know, like you'll get a small amount of orange peel, but because the size of bonnets, it's a lot of flattening, it's a lot of time on the DA. Oh, there's Rob. Spot Rob challenge. But yeah, you don't want to be spending all that time DA in the bonnet and, you know, going through Trizac pads and all this stuff. You'll see, I'll give it a little. Oh, I tried to give it a little. I think I had to go and get some help to help me lift that up because it's awkward on the stand. You see there, it's a little flat now. But look at how that base coat's dried as well. I was saying about the texture it had before. And you can just see here that the lacquer lays down silky smooth. And you see what I'm looking for is the lights. You see the lights on the roof and the reflection in the clear coat. It's not so obvious now, but as I bring the gun towards myself, you're able to see the reflection, and that lets you know where your level of peel is. Well, that's how I judge it anyway. I can see where I am. Does it need more? Is it too wet? You know, am I going to run it? Just double check your pressures. I think mine crept up slightly there. And that's another thing as well. Be careful with your airline. You don't want to pull this bonnet stand over. And you'll notice again with my sort of routine, I guess it's called a routine, but just how I go around edges, and then attack the face of the panel. And you just see going around, getting that nice finish. I like spraying the darker panels as well because you get a good reflection from it, so you can really see what your sort of gloss levels are. If it's white, I don't know if you guys have sprayed many white cars, but you tend to go snow blind and you can't really see where you are anymore. You know, I've worked with some guys that didn't, you know, they absolutely refused to paint white cars because after a couple of minutes you can't really tell. Now, your experience will help you with lighter colours, but these darker ones, it's so easy to see where you are, where you're going, what levels of orange peel you've got. So I'll just finish this one off, and then I'd imagine we're going back over the bumper and bonnet again. There we go. So the second and final coat. I know it's been a long video, guys, but I'll talk you through the whole process. I know I wanted this to be about wet on wet, which it is. Like I say, it's the perfect foundation for your paints. But I'll talk you through the full process. You can just see, I said it before, I'm a bit of a robot. I want everything the same. Edges, edges, edges. In that edge, hit this edge, then cover the face of the part. And because I do it so consistently, I am getting great results time after time after time, which keeps the boss happy, which keeps me happy, and keeps the client happy. So smiles all around, I guess. You just see that luster coming through with this blue. Such a nice colour. Again, look at the detail that I'm taking the time to do those inside edges. A lot of them you probably can't see when it's on the car and the grill's there, but if it's right when I give it to the next guy to build this car up, it's right, you know, it's gone. You know, you might think it's covered and it doesn't need it, but then if it does need it when it's being fitted up, again, it's too late. So I put a paint as far around as possible. Again, visible edge, let's get it painted. Is it, you know, could you buff it up if you needed to? Yeah, but I'd rather just make sure it was covered. 2 good coats, and you see the finish on these parts is phenomenal. Really, really happy with how this job came out. Say this job, 2 jobs. And I do tend to do that if I can stick 2 similar colours in the booth. It's, you know, more productive for us in our particular body shop. Obviously, if you're a DIY guy at home, yeah, you're not going to be cramming a booth load full. You paint them where you can, but you know, I wouldn't be painting a silver and a black, or you know, a white and a red or something. You've got to be careful on how you choose your colours that you want to mix. You just see there the old glove trick. I see a few people mentioning that in the comments as well, that like we really don't know why that trick's died out, why people aren't using it, but it's a good one, you know, for checking your edge. As long as it takes me to do that, it makes the difference between, you know, a possible rework or an awkward polish. So just little tricks and tips like that save me a bunch of time. You know, I have had, especially when I was at the BMW place, there's awkward part where the headlamp goes in, and if it's not right, you know, the chances of polishing it up are quite slim, and it's more than likely you have to do like a localized repair on that area just to bring a good amount of lacquer onto it, or, you know, in some cases possibly you might burn through polishing it and have to, you know, spot the bumper in and re-clear the whole thing. So just like little tips like that glove trick, they can be quite handy. And you'll see here I'm just coming in with my final coat on the bonnet. I ran out of clear coat and I went back to get the pot fill back up so that I could film the bumper, but obviously I turned it off when I ran out to get some more clear and forgot to turn it back on. So we won't see the last coat on the BMW bumper, but I will walk around the whole lot and you'll get to see the finish. So I'd like to thank you all for joining me on this sort of half-hour odd adventure of going from wet on wet right through to clear, and you can see the finish on this bonnet from having the right substrate to start with the wet on wet, applying the base coat and the clear coat on top of that wet on wet, and that's provided me with a brilliant paint job. So I'd like to thank you all for watching. Please consider subscribing if you've got any value from these videos, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.